What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Anthony Bruno Show. I am Anthony Bruno. We're getting closer and closer to the return of the NHL as 24 teams are coming back to compete for the Stanley Cup. One of those teams is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their season was a roller coaster of emotions, and I know they haven't won anything since 1967, but today I'm going to talk about why I think the Leafs could win the Stanley Cup in 2020. So let's go. Before I get to the video, I just want to mention how excited I am about my new set because I have a brand new sign for the Anthony Bruno Show and it looks unreal. My good friend Daniel at rdwoodworking.ca made this amazing custom sign, beautiful wood finish, epoxy in the middle, and my favorite part, the lights. There's a link in the description to his website. He's got some awesome stuff, so go check it out. But right now, let's get back to the video. When the NHL season was suspended back in March, the Leafs were sitting in third place in the Atlantic Division with 81 points, good for the 8th best record in the Eastern Conference. They were holding down a playoff spot, but not a single person on the planet was picking them to win the Stanley Cup, and rightfully so. They were very inconsistent this season and were never able to find a rhythm. If there's one week that encapsulates the entire Leafs season, it was from February 18th to the 25th. This week was ridiculous. Starting on February 18th, the Leafs got blown out in Pittsburgh, losing 5-2. So they returned home to Toronto 2 days later and beat the Penguins 4-0 this time. But just when you thought they had things figured out, oh no, it gets even better because on home ice, they got blown out 6-3 to the Carolina Hurricanes, losing to their own Zamboni driver, David Ayres. It was one of the most embarrassing losses in franchise history. And just when you thought the entire organization was going to come crashing down, the Leafs followed up that loss with one of their most impressive wins of the season, beating the Tampa Bay Lightning on the road 4-3. I mean, that week was an absolute shit show and perfectly shows how the Leafs' regular season went down. But let's take things back all the way to the start of the season. What happened? Well, the season got off to a terrible start when head coach Mike Babcock decided to make Jason Spezza a healthy scratch on opening night in Toronto when Spezza was set to make his hometown debut against the Ottawa Senators of all teams, a club he played 11 years for. It was supposed to be an amazing moment for Spezza and all his family and friends in attendance. Babcock tried to defend the move, saying that Spezza was still trying to learn the Leafs penalty kill, even though the guy has played in the NHL for 17 years. So it was just a brutal excuse, and even though the Leafs won the game that night, it set the stage for their terrible start to the season because the Leafs only won 9 of their first 23 games under Babcock until he was finally fired in November and replaced by Sheldon Keefe. And the Leafs got off to an amazing start under Sheldon Keefe. They won 15 of the first 20 games that he coached, going 15-5-0. They look like a totally new team. The players were rejuvenated. Tyson Barrie finally scored his first goal of the season. Everyone was having fun again, and the Leafs were finally starting to look like a team that was one of the betting favorites to win the Stanley Cup before the season started. But then the Leafs struggled over the next 27 games, going 12-10-5 when the season was suspended due to COVID-19. And at the end of the day, despite how crazy their season was, they were still holding down a playoff spot. And there were some very positive things to take from Sheldon Keefe's first 47 games as head coach of the Leafs. In those 47 games, the Leafs had the 8th best record in the NHL. They were the number 1 offense in the league, leading the NHL in goals per game. They had the 2nd-ranked power play, only behind the Edmonton Oilers. And then their penalty kill improved from 27th under Babcock to 13th under Keefe. And on top of that, the Leafs improved from 24th to 17th in goals against per game. So the Leafs improved across the board with Sheldon Keefe in control. And keep in mind some of the things he was dealing with, because as great as Keefe's track record as a coach has been in all of the levels of hockey, this was his first time coaching in the NHL, and he had to take over this team on the fly in an extremely passionate and volatile market, and was expected to turn their season around right away. And guess what? He pulled it off. And yes, he coached a lot of the same guys on the Toronto Marlies when they won the AHL championship. so he had familiarity with a lot of the players, but doing it at the NHL level is a completely different beast. And in my opinion, Keefe did a great job. If he was coaching the Leafs all season long, you can guarantee they would have finished better than the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. And let's also keep in mind the ridiculous amount of injuries the Leafs dealt with this season. And I know other teams like the Penguins and Avalanche also dealt with significant injuries, but let's focus on the Leafs for a moment. Okay, starting with their top 9 forwards. 5 of their top 9, including Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Zach Hyman, Andreas Johnsson, and Ilya Mikheyev, missed a combined 95 games due to injury. And despite missing all those guys, the Leafs were still one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. But even worse was the defense core. When you look at the Leafs' top 6, okay, 4 of their top 6 defensemen, including Morgan Rielly, Jake Muzzin, Travis Dermott, and Cody Ceci, missed a combined 68 games this season. That is absolutely ridiculous. When you're missing that many guys out of your top 6, you're going to be in trouble. And luckily, the Leafs had guys like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren come in and hold down the fort. But when you're missing players like Morgan Rielly and Jake Muzzin for a significant period of time, it's not going to be pretty. When the NHL returns later this year, all these players are going to be back with the exception of Johnsson, who's still going to be rehabbing from knee surgery. So this is going to be the first time the Leafs have pretty much been fully healthy since last year's playoffs. So when the NHL does return, this Leafs team is going to be extremely dangerous. Another disaster the Leafs dealt with this season was their backup goaltending situation. Michael Hutchinson was an absolute nightmare. He appeared in 15 games and only had 4 wins. He seems like a great guy, but the dude was just straight up terrible and giving the Leafs AHL caliber goaltending. Things finally turned around when the Leafs acquired Jack Campbell from the LA Kings, finally giving Toronto a legit number 2 goalie and a guy that has the ability to be a number 1 when you need him. And on top of the Leafs' backup goaltending troubles, Freddie Andersen wasn't having a very good season, so it remains to be seen how he's going to look when the NHL season does return, especially considering his track record of getting off to slow starts. But maybe the 5 months off is going to do Freddie some good. So if he can come back and return to the Freddie that we saw during his first 3 seasons with the Leafs, then Toronto is going to be in great shape when hockey comes back. When the Leafs come back, they're going to take on the Columbus Blue Jackets in a best-of-5 qualifying round series to see who moves on to the first round of the playoffs. The Blue Jackets are a great defensive team, and they're going to get a lot of guys back from injury as well, most notably stud defenseman Seth Jones, but the Leafs are going to be a nightmare to deal with. And I say that because when the NHL does return, players are going to be rusty, and I think it's going to be a lot harder for teams to lock down defensively. So teams with a lot of offensive firepower and game breakers like the Leafs have, I think are going to have the advantage because the games are going to feel like it's the beginning of the season again when things are so wide open and teams are playing aggressively because it usually takes a little bit of time for goalies to get comfortable and for teams to nail down their defensive systems. And unlike Babcock, who was extremely stubborn when it came to making in-game adjustments during the playoffs and changing his strategy from game to game in a playoff series, Keefe is a guy who will not hesitate for 1 second to shuffle the lines or try new things, especially if something isn't working. And the Leafs are going to need that, especially in a short 5-game series, to kick things off. We're talking about a guy in Babcock who once played Leo Komarov more minutes in a playoff game than Austin Matthews. I promise we will never see something insane like that under Sheldon Keefe. Year after year, there always seems to be a team that makes a deep playoff run that we didn't see coming. And with the season suspended for nearly 5 months, things are going to get crazy when the NHL returns. So if there was ever a year to expect the unexpected, this is it. With all the talent and depth they have, especially on offense, and with all the players they're getting back from injury, especially on the defense core, and with a goalie like Freddie Andersen, who can get as hot as any goaltender in the NHL, I truly believe the Leafs can surprise a lot of people this year and make a deep playoff run. And it would be the most Toronto Maple Leafs thing ever if they actually won the Stanley Cup in a wild season like this and ended their drought dating back to 1967. But unfortunately, the one thing that can derail everything is COVID-19, because even with the NHL being in a controlled environment in the two bubble cities, it's inevitable that players, coaches, and training staff members are going to continue testing positive. This is something that the NHL and all the other major sports leagues have obviously taken into consideration, but the hope is that they can control the health situation as best as possible. But man, nothing would be worse than a star player testing positive in the middle of the playoffs and ruining a team's chances of winning a series. So let's hope that that doesn't happen. Let's all just try our best to stay positive and hope that the players do everything in their power to protect themselves and stay healthy. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about the Leafs and their chances of competing for the Stanley Cup this season. I can't wait for the NHL to return this year. It's going to be so awesome and so unpredictable as 24 teams battle it out for the Stanley Cup. And as always, I would really appreciate it if you like the video, share it on social media, and subscribe to my channel, especially if you're a sports fan and want to see more content like this. It would really help me out. So that does it for this video, and I will see you guys next time.